So I signed a book deal this week, Monday, for the 9th time, so it didn't really merit a drink, but I had one anyway. But just to complicate matters, I am writing it both in English and Icelandic. The Icelandic version is called Fólkið sem hvarf, I think, the people who disappeared, which is a reference to the Norse people who lived in Greenland and mysteriously disappeared in the 15th century. No one knows why, but I have solved the mystery. But you'll have to wait until October. The English version, I don't know when or if it'll come out, maybe a year from now. We'll see. But it's called Arctic Fat, for reasons that will soon become clear. The whole town was dry. Rumors abounded. In the countryside there were doctors who still had a dose, but there was no time to drive around to look for one. I was leaving that afternoon. This was my last chance to score. COVID had been hard on our kind. The skinny ones hadn't changed at all, but those previously only a little flabby emerged on the other side of COVID almost comically out of shape. Banned from almost all forms of exercise, locked in our little rooms with little to do but eat. We had gone from chubby to obese. Our only hope now was drugs. And those drugs had just become available. They bore strange names like Saxenda and Ozempic, offering a quick cure for all our ills. But not everyone rejoiced. Mountains of prejudice piled upon the layers of fat. Jabbing your protruding belly with a needle was seen as vanity, something best left to the already luscious Kardashians. But in truth, we just wanted to live. After you reach a certain weight, appearance becomes the least of your worries. The choice is not between eating what you like or constantly worrying about weight. It's the fat ones who worry the most, for there's no limit to how much they can gain. Supposedly this is a survival mechanism to store up for hard times, but the system is broken. The fat ones are always hungry, the lean ones less so. The fat become ever fatter, but the body is not created to carry so much weight. After a while, it begins to give in. The symptoms are many and various. Inability to sleep is one of the most common. Even if you don't develop apnea, your body, like a beached whale, struggles to breathe regularly. It wakes you up time and again with mighty snores and other unearthly sounds, a clear indication that not all is well. Remedy is needed, and yet it struggles against these. Any exertion leads to profuse sweating, and between the many layers, fungus starts to grow. The joints begin to give out. At the peak of the COVID closures, the soles of my feet were in such pain that I had to roll a ball over them every evening to get relief. On top of this, I developed gout, which sounds like something befitting a medieval king, but no less painful for that. This manifests as a large red bulge in the joints leading to the toes and quickly makes itself felt. Henry VIII may have gotten gout as he grew ever larger. According to the all-seeing chatbot, he probably died from a combination of inflammation, chronic pyogenic suppuration, or edema, and finally chronic osteomyelitis, which is a chronic septic inflammation and infection of the bone. He had by then long lost the ability to walk and was carried around in a sedan chair, but at least he remained sexually active, getting married twice at the height of his corpulence. In this sense, at least, it was good to be the king. I had no such luck, but on the bright side, thanks to my COVID blowout, I had finally reached the requisite size to qualify for professional help. Doctors show little concern for the somewhat fat, but once you reach a certain number, they begin to worry. I was their problem now. After all, I was living in a Nordic welfare state, even if budget cuts were making it less so year on year. A crack team of doctors, nutritionists, and psychologists were assembled, and I was sent off to the Reykjavík clinic in the town of Mosfellsbær, just outside of Reykjavik, for a month. This is where the Nobel Prize-winning author Halldór Laxness grew up and lived most of his life, in front of the farm from which he took his last name. He even spent his final days at the clinic, suffering from Alzheimer's. A cruel fate for one of Iceland's few intellectuals at the time, but at least he wasn't fat. The treatment on offer was of a holistic nature. There was prodding and poking, lectures, evaluations, and a rather misjudged kayak trip where it took half the staff to push me from shore. Being overweight, you see, is not a disease, but a symptom. The fat is not merely on your body, but also in your mind. If you begin to feel better about yourself, you will become less fat. All well and good in principle, but how can a fat man learn to feel better about himself? I had always been fat, but how fat I was varied from time to time. Much like Picasso had his blue period, his cubist period, and his Harlequin period, I had been merely pudgy, quite overweight, and now, finally, morbidly obese. I had been a fat kid. My parents lived in Norway, but every time I was sent to Iceland for the summer, my grandmothers would send me back far heavier than I arrived. To my mother's consternation, I had always been thin and had no idea where it all came from. As a teenager, I decided to lose weight and managed to do this by not eating for a whole summer. She was now worried I was developing anorexia, but she needn't have. By my early 20s, the belly started coming back, and then some. I blame society. Cold War Iceland had been a very isolated place. Apart from the hot dog knockoffs, there was very little in the way of fast food. But by the early 90s, the new world order of globalization poured in. Not only did hamburger and sandwich stands start springing up all over the place, but pizza, up until then only available at that one Italian restaurant, could now be ordered at all times of day and night. And if it didn't arrive within 30 minutes, you got them for free. What was a poor boy to do? Frankly, I'm not much of a foodie. I don't cook much, nor do I even particularly care what I eat, and yet I need to be constantly partaking. Quantity over quality. At mealtimes, I generally avoid company and prefer to eat undisturbed in front of the TV. It has happened that I've been sitting with people in a restaurant and finished the leftovers when they left, but not very often. At Reykjavík, they try to teach you to savor the food. Take your time, don't eat in front of a screen. Actually, enjoying eating apparently makes you less fat, but this is beyond me. I don't really like it, but I do it anyway. Perhaps it's the anticipation. Food is what gives life meaning, that holy hour which comes twice a day, every day, lunch and dinner, with all the little things in between, human kindness and warmth are rare commodities. But there's always food. Only one thing seemed to bring my father any pleasure, and this came at mealtimes. He liked to eat, and he was very good at it. Like most Icelanders, he enjoyed his hot dogs and burgers, but was always given to more refined cuisine. This could be ordered at restaurants or prepared by my mother, who was always ready to jump up from her chair and procure that one missing ingredient without which the whole ceremony would be ruined. Mealtimes took forever. My father was usually only halfway through when everyone else was done. He savored every bite, knowing that this was as good as it would ever get. Anticipation was a key part of the process. After a hefty breakfast, it was forbidden to eat anything until evening, so as not to ruin the appetite before the main event of the day. Perhaps a walk was taken before dinner as a final preparation, or if this could not be arranged, then a gin and tonic would do the trick, something I was later to learn. When food was finally served, and this could be at a very late hour, the pangs of hunger were reaching their peak, which made me want to gobble everything down as quickly as possible. Somehow, this never affected him, and he would sometimes be finishing the same plate by the time everyone else was already sitting in front of the TV. Despite everything, my father maintained a reasonable figure into his 40s, and even then, only got a little bit fat. Perhaps this was because he had been a prize-winning skier in his youth and still took the slopes on occasion. This was more than could be said for most of the men in his family, many of whom grew to tremendous proportions. One uncle announced that he intended to commit suicide with knife and fork, and proceeded to do so, the process taking many years. For his brother, my grandfather, the end came quicker. His heart giving out on a plane to Spain at the age of 74. This was an embarrassment to my grandmother, who had to sit next to his bloated corpse as the passengers were forced to remain on board while a local doctor would be roused from his siesta to ascertain that whatever killed him wasn't contagious. It wasn't, but nevertheless seems to have been passed down through the generations. My father may have been one of the finest eaters I've ever known. He was not, however, a very good father. Apart from the cooking, my mother's top priority was to make sure that nothing inflamed his temper. This was a tough job, as most things did, with me being a suspected culprit who had to be kept in line. There was not much joy in my childhood, but there was food. On those rare occasions when there was something to celebrate, or the frequent ones when there was something to lament, food was the remedy. Happy food, sad food, normal food, special food. Food was always the answer. Still is. Not sure what the question was. After a month at the fat farm, I had not gotten much in the way of results, but at least I had been registered into the system. This was enough to be entrusted with a Saxenda prescription. For whatever reason, the authorities had chosen Saxenda over Ozempic, also a diabetes drug with weight loss benefits that only had to be injected once a week. Saxenda, however, requires a daily dose. This means that far greater amounts are required, which again takes up more space than the cargo ships coming from Denmark. Whatever remained from the last batch had long since been requisitioned by other overweight people, uncharacteristically swift on their feet. The whole town had gone dry. Last Wednesday, the people at the pharmacy assured me that the ship had already arrived and the valuable cargo would be distributed to drugstores by the end of the week. At the end of said week, they promised it would be available by the beginning of next. Now it was Monday afternoon, and the precious fluid was still stuck in boxes at the harbor. Why do you want Saxenda? The apothecary pronounced. Soon everyone will be switching over to Reykjavík. That might be so, but my prescription was for Saxenda, and it was unclear if it would be transferable to the latest version of the wonder drugs, this one specifically intended for weight loss, rather than diabetes. In any case, it was too late for me. My plane to Germany was leaving. Saxenda or not, I had to get to the airport. I would not be back home for 6 months. And that meant 6 more months of being fat.